Oh, what is up, YouTube? My name is G3Iron, and a couple of minutes ago, this just dropped an update from Chris Wilson, the lead developer at Grinding Gear Games. So, without further ado, we're going to read through it, and feel free to leave your thoughts, your reactions, and your comments down below. So, from Chris, it doesn't take much reading on the official forums or subreddit to realize that a group of Path of Exile players are angry about a number of topics and feel that we haven't given solid answers about how we're going to address these issues. We will explain as many of these topics as we can in the Q&A that is currently scheduled for later this week. However, one thing that the Q&A doesn't address is how we got here. I wanted to personally post an explanation of what has been going on behind the scenes at Grinding Gear Games that has led to this state. Synthesis was more work than we expected. It was developed over the Christmas holiday, and its gameplay prototype came in very late. We didn't have a lot of time to iterate on it before release or to make drastic changes that it potentially needed. While our improvements after its launch have helped a lot and many players are enjoying it, we fully acknowledge that it is not our best league and it is not up to the quality standards that Path of Exile players should expect from us. It will not be merged into the core game in 3.7. Maybe we can do something with it in the future, but we have no current plans. So those of you that were wondering, is Synthesis going core? At the moment, the plan is no. When we reveal 3.7 in 3 weeks, you'll see that its league has a focus on repeatable fun, and the combat revamp has a lot of focus on improving the fundamentals of Path of Exile's gameplay. In order to do this, we have had our heads down focusing on getting 3.7 to be ready as early as we can within its development cycle. But that's not all we need to work on. There are a large number of critical projects going on at the same time. For a start, our 4.0 Mega expansion is taking a huge amount of the company's time. We see this upgrade as critical because the next generation of action RPGs is coming and we have to be ready. Not proactively keeping up with competitors is how companies die. We don't see a huge time investment in 4.0 as optional at all. In addition to 4.0, we've also committed to running the ExileCon convention later this year. You may think that this is a fun optional side project for us, but we see it as critical because we need a stage, literally, to announce 4.0 to the world. Talking to other developers has shown us that conventions are by far the best way to market a new product of this size. Then there's the Korean launch. South Korea is a large market and we feel we are years late to release there. Due to that, we committed with our publisher to release in Korea alongside 3.7, and we will meet this commitment, but it's yet another project to handle concurrently. Then there's various issues with Path of Exile on the console platforms, which feel bad about because we have made promises that we haven't yet fulfilled. After the Xbox launch, all of our console resources went into preparing the PS4 release, which meant we didn't spend enough time supporting the feature requests from the Xbox community. Now that the PS4 version has launched, we need to make headway on console features. All of these areas from 3.7 through to the eventual release of 4.0 are going to make massive and lasting fundamental improvements to Path of Exile. We have been making great headway and are incredibly excited to show this work when it's ready. However, this has all come at a cost. While we have released many patches during the 3.6 cycle to address community concerns, the significant internal development focus on the long term of Path of Exile has meant that we have chosen not to prioritize things like completely overhauling Synthesis or creating an entirely new type of one-month race. Each week, there are feedback threads about many different topics. The community generally do a great job of constructively presenting reasons for wanting various changes, and we appreciate that. When given feedback, we have two options. First, assemble the team of 7 key people who are needed to solve the issue, discuss it for half a day, and then lock in the solution so that we can at least tell the community what our plan is, even if it's a little while before we get to it. An example of this is when we made the large functional and balance changes to Delve based on community feedback. The drawback with doing this is that it derails up to 7 important projects that we were working on in order to solve the problem. We have to be selective about which problems we apply this approach to. The second option is to read and consider the feedback and specifically decide to deal with it later. This doesn't mean it isn't going to be done. It just means we are prioritizing the existing release we're currently working on. An example of this is the map stash tabs in standard situation, where we waited a whole league before we got it solved. If we had put the time into this solution a league earlier, synthesis would have been even worse. Simply put, we cannot fix every problem every league. There are going to be problems that we don't address quickly. We'll get to them as soon as we can. A big topic in the gaming industry recently is development crunch. Some studios make their teams work 14-hour days to pack every patch full of the most fixes and improvements possible. Sometimes when we read our own patch note threads and community feedback, we feel that we are being asked to do the same. I will not run this company that way. While there's inevitably a bit of optional paid overtime near league releases, the vast majority of Path of Exile development cycle has great work and life balance. This is necessary to keep our developers happy and healthy for the long term, but it does mean that some game improvements will take a while to be made. We try as hard as we can to communicate with our community about our development priorities. We post daily news and aim for some kind of substantial development update every week. Bex and her team are all over the community posts, passing information back to the developers and seeking answers to questions. However, as I explained earlier, in order to be able to share our firm plans about topics, we have to assemble the right developers, derail their current work, and make some time-consuming decisions. Due to the sheer amount of stuff we've been working on, certain topics have not been addressed to the satisfaction of the community. I am very sorry about this. One of our key values is our relationship with our community. We feel that our internal emphasis on longer-term improvements to Path of Exile has caused some damage to that relationship in the short term. We will make sure that we find a good balance between addressing immediate concerns and making the long-term improvements the game needs. Later this week, we'll post our first set of answers to the questions from the Q&A. I'll make sure that it includes all the hot topics such as synthesis, trade, console improvements, races, etc. We can't wait to announce 3.7 in 3 weeks. Its name is on the list. Wow! Well, first off, hats off, and round of applause that the lead developer at Grinding Gear Games is so transparent and wants to be transparent. I mean, this just dropped 15 minutes ago. So great job from Chris and from Grinding Gear Games, again, and from the whole team there, the staff of just over 100 people, about always being transparent, about always having different things for us as a community to interact with and to give feedback on. That is always great. The fact that GGG is always pushing themselves with their development cycles and with their development projects is really ambitious. We've talked about this, I feel like, ad nauseum throughout Synthesis League. I feel like every single week we've had discussions about whether or not Synthesis will go core and whether or not there's improvements that need to be made and whether or not players are enjoying Synthesis. We've had those discussions, I feel like, ad nauseum for the last couple of weeks, for the last several weeks since Synthesis release, and I feel like this is really awesome and just another hallmark timestamp, really, that you could place that shows that GGG is committed to us as a community, to our feedback as a community, and that when they get it wrong, they want to let us know and acknowledge, hey, we got this wrong, as well as give an explanation. I don't feel like this is an excuse. I already can hear some of you saying, oh, Iron, this is just, GGG PR, and this is them just, covering for a terrible league. You know what? I think GGG tried something really, really ambitious with Synthesis. I think the last year, and I've said it in previous videos, has been, if not the single best calendar year in Path of Exile's existence, it's certainly the best calendar year since I've really started playing heavily at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. This has been an awesome year in terms of all the different leagues that have come out, all the different content cycles that have been revisited and revamped. I mean, talking about Bestiary on release, it was just horribly received, and yet they took it away, revamped it, reworked it, brought it back. Delve League was nigh unplayable on release and so many different problems, and yet within 3 days they had changes that were ready to go. In terms of incursion temples and crashing, which a lot of you might be thinking, incursion temples and crashing, what's the deal? Why nobody ever crashed during incursion? Exactly, that was a lot of work and a lot of decision making that had to go in on that in GGG's part. to say that incursions were already going to be preloaded and you didn't have to go through a load screen to actually interact with the incursions. That was awesome. Just how smooth that was. Betrayal, with all the different needs and fixes that it needed upon release and the different patches that have come out to try and help people with their lag, as well as other performance issues associated with Betrayal. Like, I just look at the last year and I go, this game, for really from 2015 through early 2018, this game, the constant feedback that I partook in as a player and that I interacted with and heard from a lot of community members was, where's the end game, and there's not enough for us to do. We just get to maps and then blah. And really, 2018 has solved that. I mean, now we're on the opposite end of the spectrum where so many folks are saying, oh, there's always something to do. I feel like it's disruptive. I feel like there's just ad nauseum things to do in Path of Exile, and there's always something to be doing, and that you almost need to build several different characters to take on several different types of content. I mean, that is a great solution that they've worked on for the last year. So I really appreciate this level of transparency right here in the middle of Synthesis League. And now, of course, they've announced a Flashback League, and some people are even coming out and critiquing Flashback League, like, oh, we don't want a Flashback League. Why is it that you didn't give us this other thing? I think this is awesome. Like, we're right around the corner from 4.0. PS4 launch just happened. Xbox launch happened 2 years ago. Like, this is not a small thing that PoE is expanding on so many different levels and growing on so many different levels. And I think Chris does a great job of just laying it all out there, not making excuses, just saying, hey, look, this is what's going on behind the scenes. In order to make changes and make pivots as a company, we can do that, but it costs time. And whenever we're going to solve one issue, it means that we're not proactively approaching another issue. So I think that's a really level-headed response. It's a great response. It's professional. Chris isn't taking shots at the community, and he's even got the guts to say down here, hey, we are thankful that you guys give us feedback. Like, how many different companies say, hey, just lay off of us, or hey, you guys are toxic, or hey, you guys are trolls? Like, GGG is constantly listening to us, whether that's on Twitter, whether that's on Twitch, whether that's on YouTube, whether that's on the forums, whether that's on Reddit. They're all over it. And regardless of whether or not you feel like the GGG is interacting with every single topic that gets brought up, they're seeing it, they're interacting with it, and then they're having to make a decision. Okay, is this big enough that we pull resources from a new project or from an ongoing project that's going on over here? Like, these are really tough business decisions that have to get made. And just like in a good PoE build, you have to make a decision with limited resources about what you're going to do. The passive tree has limited resources. You only have a set number of passives. In your ascendancy, you have to make a decision. You only have a set number of ascendancy points. Your build slots, you only have a certain number of item slots that you get. Just like you have to make decisions in your build because you're limited with your resources, the same is true for running a company. All right, so I think this is great. Not every company comes out and has a lead developer say, look, this is where we're at. This is maybe some factors as to why things didn't go as well as we hoped for this particular development cycle. And we're working hard on 3.7, and even beyond that, we're working on 4.0. So I think this is awesome. I think this is good news for PoE in general. If Grinding Gear Games has a track record of coming out with awesome content on a regular cycle when they've only got a few months to prep and prepare and work on it, right? Like, let's get real here for a second. They only have a few months every single development cycle. And they're telling us months, if not years out. I believe 4.0 was announced, and they were talking about it all the way back when Fall of Oriath was announced, and there were 6 new acts that were added to the game. And yet they said, hey, we're already working on 4.0. They've had years now to plan 4.0. I'm stoked for it. I am hyped for it. And as always, we will continue to cover Path of Exile because we love it here in the G3 community. So we'll be covering it and getting hyped for it as always. I hope that today is the day a Mirror of Calandra drops for you. Leave us a comment down below. Let us know what you guys think. Maybe you do think Chris is just making excuses. I'd love to interact with that. I'd love to hear your argument about that, if you've got it. But of course, leave us a comment down below. And as always, stick around for more Path of Exile content because we've got awesome new stuff coming up as we discuss Flashback League and then 3.7 right around the corner, just under 2 months away.
Nice patrons, yes, good patrons. They're so kind and supportive.
I can't believe you watched that thing. That was a good job. You did it. You got through the whole video. Yay!